Hey, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Hemmings Hot Rod BBQ podcast. I have been trying to get our next guest on this show for a hell of a long time. And between his schedule and my schedule and running around, playing with cars, and, welcome to the show, Jerry Horton, lead guitarist for Papa Roach, creator of Drive Culture on Instagram, creator of Reprise, one of the baddest 51 Mercuries on the planet Earth. Just outstanding, dude. Thank you for coming on, man. How are you?
I'm great. I'm stoked to be here. I've been a fan of the podcast for a long time, and finally, I'm stoked to be able to talk to you about my favorite things.
Dude, it's so good, man. I mean, it's interesting when I first came across, I tell everybody this, I probably look at 300 to 500 cars a night. Like, that's what I do. I sit on the couch, I go over the internet, I go, auction, like Hemmings auctions, I go to BAT, I go to Facebook Marketplace, and I just look at stuff. And then I go and I look at old hot rod articles and all this stuff. And it's what I do. Like, it's like I always tell people, I'm like, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't really go out. So it's like, I'll either play with cars or talk to people who play with cars. That's pretty much the bane of my existence,
Yep.
So how did you get into, was it music first and then cars, or was it cars first and then music provided the access to that? Like, walk me through your whole process here.
Cars first. My dad was a gearhead, even before I was born. We grew up on an Air Force base, didn't even have a garage, and he, decided that he wanted to build a race, like a drag car. So he got himself a ratty old Bug and stripped the whole thing, rebuilt the whole thing in the carport on base, took it drag racing.
Really?
This was in Northern California, and we would go to Sonoma a lot, like the Sacramento Raceway sometimes, but then go to Sonoma, and he would take down Camaros, Mustangs, and that was a big thing. And then he would take us to bug meets and the funny car and drag races out at Sonoma, and that was it.
And you grew up, you're like, because I live in the East Bay, so you're right up, or you grew up pretty much right across the bridge, right? For the most part.
Yeah. Vacaville is like an hour east of San Francisco. So yeah, like not that far,
Right.
So, yep.
Oh, so your dad builds this Bug. You're on an Air Force base. Did he kind of bring you into the fold? Like, all right, man, come on. Were you one of the kids? He's like, hand me this wrench, hand me this 10 millimeter, do this, do that.
I mean, I didn't, I was kind of all over the place when I was a kid, but I would do a little helping here and there. And, we didn't like really wrench together, but
yeah,
I had my friends, he had his thing, and every once in a while he'd say, come out here and help me hold the flashlight and do that kind of stuff.
Right.
So, yeah.
So then when he first started racing, was that something, like, tell me about your first experience going to the drag strip with him and watching him race.
I just remember, I remember watching him race and thinking it was just the most incredible thing. Like, this car was so fast in my mind, and obviously my perspective was completely not developed yet. And then I got to sit in the car when he went down the strip, and I was just like, oh my god, this is crazy. But yeah, I mean, it just continued from there. Like, I didn't really get into racing just because I had other things that I was doing.
Right.
But it kind of, once that era ended, that's when kind of the music started.
Okay.
And that's when the shift happened. So
okay, so when did you first start playing music, and what was like the first time that you were just like, wow, I'm kind of good at this, like I could probably move forward with this? Like, was that a conscious choice to be like, I want to be in a band, I want to do this, or was it like, I like playing guitar, But how did that unfold? I'm always curious because I can't sing a tune to save my freaking life, and I'm always enamored by anyone who does what you do. I'm always enamored by it.
So my story is like the complete anomaly, like stars aligned, everything, like one of the luckiest people in the world. Like I was just, I lived in Vacaville. I was just learning guitar. I took some lessons, but I was just playing in my bedroom, learning the songs that I loved by the bands that I loved. And at that time it was metal bands, Metallica and Megadeth and Testament and Sepultura and, all those bands. And at the time I had a girlfriend who went to a different school, and we're friends with all these other people. And we had some mutual friends. I went to a party at my friend's house, and this band played, and it was Papa Roach, but it was the singer, drummer, different bass player, and a trombone player.
Okay.
Yep. And so I'm just hanging out. I watched them play, and they're super goofy. Like, I mean, pretty much sounded like Chili Peppers.
Okay.
Just really funky. And the funniest thing was that they did a cover of Fire by Jimi Hendrix with no guitar player. Just kids doing whatever without a care in the world. And I was like, that's cool, but it wasn't my thing. I wasn't into it. I was a metalhead. I was like, that's the only thing that's cool. And I think probably a week later, Jacoby called me and he's like, dude, you play guitar, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, why don't you come over and play? And the first thing I said was, I don't think it's going to work out.
Sure. Just put a bullet in that right in the beginning. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. It's not my thing,
Right.
And he called me 3 more times. And on the last time he was like, come on, I know you're just playing in your bedroom. You don't have anything to do. Just come over. I'm like, oh, okay, fine. So I brought my stuff over, and we got together. And at first it wasn't it wasn't my thing, but I had fun and found a way to kind of put some styles together. And I just loved, playing with people. And then we were like, let's do some shows, which is like playing at our friend's house in his backyard. And we just kept doing it, and it was fun. And we did that for a couple, like 2 or 3 years. And that was the point where we started making a name for ourselves. We're like actually promoting the shows, hanging flyers on intersections, and making t-shirts and doing that whole thing, and getting a local following. And that was when we go, maybe we could do this. So it transitioned into actually getting shows at clubs in the area, like in Sacramento, get shows at the Cattle Club. And then San Francisco, it was like the Cocodrie, and Slim's was like, that was like, we're stepping up. But just as whatever we could get. I mean, in the beginning we even played, like, our bass player's mom worked at a gas station in like Richmond, and we played there. It was just like whatever we could do, so
that's awesome though. So when the success started happening, and again, success talking about like getting these gigs and going to clubs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
At that point, did you think that we could actually go farther than that? Or was there ever a point where you're like, holy crap, like we're really, really good at this, or we're getting really good? When did it occur to you that you could actually do this for a living, and that you could actually like, holy shit, like I'm I'm a professional musician. Like I could be that guy.
Well, it wasn't really until like we were in that transition phase for a while. We still had jobs. And then, you know, we got fast forward to like when we got, you know, signed and
Yeah.
then like all the interviews and everything started happening. Everybody called us an overnight success. Well, they didn't realize that it took 7 years to get there.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Everybody always
so
says
then,
that. Yeah.
so then we back up. I'd say about 97 was when we did our first full length album, recorded it in our bass player Tobin's dad's garage studio in Antioch. And, you know, that was like the local thing. And then we started swapping shows with bands from Southern California. So one of the first bands was Alien Ant Farm. And then we also swapped with Incubus.
Oh my
and
God.
like they opened up for us in Vacaville. And we did that for a little bit. And then we started just making trips to LA, like, you know, weekend trips, play a couple shows, come back.
Right.
You know, and so we did the free Monday nights at the Troubadour, you know, for a little while. And this whole time we had a manager who was, you know, he was like a local guy, but funding like the recording and all that stuff and shopping our stuff to labels. And for about 1.5 to 2 years, getting turned down by everybody. Any, like all the major labels, all the independent labels you can think of.
Right.
They were just like, you're not ready yet, or you're not our thing, or whatever.
Right.
So 98, we got, or yeah, like late 98, we got a demo deal with Warner Brothers. And that was like, you know, we were like, whoa, this is real, you know? And so we did 5 songs at NRG Studios, which is like a super nice place. You know, it's like $2,500 a day to rent it out.
Wow.
And, you know, that was like our first experience in a big studio. We recorded the songs. Most of them we had recorded previously on an EP that we did, and then you know, wrote a couple new ones. During that process, the guy who was our A&R guy got fired from Warner Brothers. So that wasn't looking good.
Yeah.
But, so they said no, and then we just basically, I don't think we were supposed to do it, but we took that demo and used it to up ourselves some more. and ended up getting a deal with DreamWorks. And this was in late 99. And it was like one of the last big rock band recording deals. And it was, DreamWorks is an awesome place. Like they were super artist friendly. And, you know, we expected ourselves to like get in the van, tour the States, clubs around America, whatever we could do, slowly build our fan base. And then we did one tour in the van, playing little crap clubs. And then the record came out, single came out. And then, you know, we were on Warped Tour, and that was like, we were super stoked because we had been going to Warped Tour as, you know, fans.
And Warped Tour back then, there were a ton of acts on that tour, right? Like, wasn't Eminem on that tour too? I remembered this. I remember this back then when I had first heard you guys, and I was like, "What?"
He wasn't on that year. He was on the year before. I think he was on that one, the one before, and then also Black Eyed Peas was. And I mean, I'm sure Deftones did it, you know. So anyway, so we get on the tour, and it's like we're surrounded by our heroes and our, you know, just like people we've been looking up to forever, and
Right.
meeting new bands that we had just discovered prior to the tour. And so we're just super stoked, right? And we start out on the third stage and in front of like, you know, 2,000 people, and we're stoked. We're just like, we're there to have fun.
Right.
And I'd say probably a week and a half to 2 weeks into the tour, we went from playing at noon on the third stage to headlining the main stage with Green Day and NoFX. And we're just
Oh
like,
my God.
what is happening? You know, it was insane. Like on the way up to that, it was like they had to move it. They had to move us. They didn't want to, and everybody was complaining about it because it was like, who are these guys? And
Right.
why do they get the headline slot? It's ridiculous. But the promoter was just like, we can't have them on the smaller stages because
Right.
then it's a safety issue because
Right.
people are trying to cram themselves in there. And so yeah, it was just like not normal, you know. So
that sounds incredible.
it was wild. And we didn't even really, it didn't register. Like, I mean, we were caught up in the moment, and it was just like, whoa, this is crazy. But we didn't really understand what happened until afterwards. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. I always find it amusing when, you know, people think somebody or a group or anybody for that matter is an overnight success because they
Yeah.
never see and I tell people this all the time. They never see the sleepless nights that you stare at the ceiling. They never see all the deals that you don't get. They never see all the failures. They never see all the people that told you no, 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 no. Right? Go do something else. Go do something else. No one ever sees that. And then all of a sudden, the hard work it pays off and it clicks. And people go, where did they come from? It's like, no, we've been doing this. We've been doing this for years. It's just it's, you know, and I always tell everybody there's no such thing as an overnight success. It's, I mean, if it happens, it's so ungodly. It's a miracle for the most part.
Yeah.
But the amount of work that goes into it, and the amount of work and the entertainment business, as you well know, is gnarly. Like it's a tricky place to navigate, you know. There's a lot of, you know, for everybody out there that's listening, everybody in the entertainment world will tell you you are the greatest thing in the world. They will tell you are the best thing ever, that you're going to be this and that and the other thing, and you're going to change the world and all this other stuff. And then all of a sudden in 2 days, they could be like, yeah, no, we're just kidding. You know what I mean? Like everything can change, right?
Yeah. They say, oh, well, you know how it is, you know.
Right.
You know, that, and to go from Warped Tour, like we went out right after that, we went out with Korn, and that was our first arena tour, and they kind of took us under their wing, and they were like, Grasshopper, we'll show you the way, you know. And I remember sitting down with bass player Fieldy one night, and he was like, look, man, what happened to you guys is not normal. You know, this is like, normally you build up to it, and you guys just went, you know, straight to number one. And don't expect that it's going to always be this way, you know.
Right.
And we listened to some degree, but it was like we were still on the ride, you know. It was just like,
Right.
we were having fun, and in the back of our minds probably thinking that it wouldn't last forever, but weren't acting like it wasn't going to last forever. You know what I mean?
Did you ever expect, because you guys, you're now close to 30 years in, or around 30 years in, right?
We don't like to talk about that, but yes.
I do. Look at my face. You see how many gray hairs I got?
I'm there.
I mean,
I'm there.
You are preaching. So like, did you, when you thought about this, like when you were a kid and you were playing, when you first started, you know, did it even enter your mind that, oh my God, this is what I'm going to do for a living?
No, I mean, no, not even when I got in the band. Like it didn't occur to me that it wasn't until we were like really serious about it that we knew that's what we wanted to do. We knew that we could do it. And then, you know, developing our sound and our style and our whole thing, that was like, it wasn't until then that we said we want to be a career band, you know, because there's
Okay.
so many bands that we looked up to that, and you know, in, as far as like the music and the artistry goes, like we we don't like to do the same thing over and over again. We like to change things up. We like to uh, bring in new styles and new influences and that kind of stuff. And some people love it, some people hate it, but
Sure.
we had these bands that we looked up to that change their styles over the years, and
Right.
we love that uh we love that journey that musicians go on, and we wanted to emulate that, and you know, we know that there aren't many bands out there that can do the same thing over and over again. Like
Right.
AC/DC, they can get away with it.
Right.
Rolling Stones, they can get away with it, but that's it. Like not many bands can do it. And we just, you know, we've always changed. It's kind of been, it's been subconscious, and it's also been a conscious thing. Some people hate it, some people love
Yeah.
it. And but that's what that's the path that we chose for ourselves, and that's, we wanted to be a career band, and that's how we figured that we were going to get there. So
Let me ask you, when you as an artist, when you incorporate these changes, right, as the career progresses, do the fans generally come along, or are the fans very vocal about if you make a change, like, yes, we like it, no, we don't? And if they don't, do you find, or however many fans say we don't like it, you get an entirely new group of fans that are discovering the band for the first time and going, oh my God, this is amazing. Like,
it
that's
happens
got to be
on
such a cool thing.
it happens on every record. And you know, it's cool, like to see new, not only to see new fans discover the band, but then also to see the comments of, you know, man, this is you. Number one, I can't believe you guys are still putting out new music. Number two, you guys are getting better.
That's
This
great.
is this is the best stuff that you guys have put out. Like seeing that is like part of what keeps us going, and you know, aside from the live shows, like this, the whole point of doing it, the whole reason that we do it. On the other side of it, we get the people who say, you know, why don't you make songs like Last Resort anymore? And it's like,
Right.
you know, we could, but we already did it. You know, if you want to
Right.
go listen to that, you can go listen to it. It's there,
Right.
you know. So
Right. Oh my God. That's got to be an amazing. It's really funny. Last night, I have a younger brother who's about 7 years younger than I. And he was here and we were just kind of bullshit. We started watching old, just MTV from back in the day. You
oh
know
yeah.
what I mean? And like I was there, unfortunately, I probably got a couple years on you. Like my rock days were from the 80s. So I grew up with all the metal bands mixed in
Yeah.
with like, Led Zeppelin and like Aerosmith and Hendrix, but then also Bon Jovi and Poison and Metallica. But when like they were like, I remember seeing Metallica at the Garden when I was a kid, and this was like 88, 89. You know what I mean? And Def Leppard, and just being like, my head just exploded all over New Jersey because I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. And it was one of those things where I can't even begin to imagine what that's got to be like. Because as a fan going in and watching guys like yourself play, it's astonishing because you're getting to really get that firsthand experience. But as an artist, what is it like when you look out on it like a stadium or like an arena and you're like, whoa, like is it nerve-wracking, or do you get over that? Like, what's it like?
Well, you kind of, okay, so you kind of get over it, but every, like, especially even on this tour, uh it's all those things that you just described in one. Like it's, part of it is whoa, part of it is I'm here to do a job, part of it is holy crap, don't mess up, you know, like it's all those things. And then you just like, it for me, it's just like we flip a switch, you know, and we
Right,
go into show mode, and it's like, okay. But
right,
as I'm walking out onto the stage, it's like, you know, we have our lighting guy is just lighting the crowd, and So they can't really see me yet. I'm seeing all them. And then
Right.
like as I'm walking to the front, that's when they realize it's going down. And I'm like, okay, let's go.
That dude, that's gotta be so amazing.
Yeah,
That's
it's
gotta be
wild.
so cool. Is it still that much fun?
Oh, I mean, especially when there's a great crowd, because not all of them are great. Uh,
Right.
when it's on, it's just like it feeds. There's like a feedback loop of energy that happens, and it's
Right.
like we're just like we're we're jumping off of a jump that we already did. You know what I mean?
Right.
In midair, just so. But there's one story that I got to tell real quick. Was
Absolutely.
that we did this show in Poland. That it's a festival they have every year, and it's a free show, and we had never heard of it. Polish Woodstock, and this was in 2010, and we get the deal memo, right, and we're looking at it, we're looking over the offer, and like, okay, yeah, cool, it's close to Germany, we can make it work logistically, and
Right.
we see the capacity, and it says 500,000, and we're like, yeah, it's probably a typo, because normally like the smaller festivals are like 50,000, around
Yeah.
50,000, 25 to 50,000. Like some of the bigger ones, like it used to be called Donington, now it's called Download
Mhm.
in the UK. That's like 60 to 75,000. There's one in Germany called Rock am Ring. It's on the Nürburgring.
Okay.
That one's like 90,000. We're like, okay, cool. So we get there, we fly into Berlin. It's like an hour drive, and we get there, and we're going through like through the site, and it goes through there's complete forest. Like there's like a dirt road that goes through this
Yeah.
forest, and we're like, oh shit, okay. And and we see all these tents in the forest, and there's people just half in their tents, half out, completely just out from the night before, and this is like noon or whatever. It
Oh
wasn't
God.
wasn't early in the morning.
Right.
uh so we're like, oh, okay, it's a pretty good scene. So we get back there to the backstage, and this is this massive area, and it's for like the where the crowd's supposed to be, and it's like empty, and this is the beginning of the day, and we're going, and then we're looking at the schedule and trying to find some other bands that we know, and there's no other bands that we know. It's all like Polish bands, you know polka bands, and like we were the only American band, and we were headlining the show. We're like, oh.
Was
So
it
we
one
look
of those
out.
things where like, what did we get in? What did we get ourselves
Yeah,
into type
totally.
of
We're
thing?
like, well, I guess it's a paid rehearsal, we're like, okay. So we look out there, I mean, and it's just, there's maybe 2 or 3 thousand people out there. There's a circle of people like playing hacky sack. There's some people like just kind of sitting in the mud. We're going, oh, okay. And our sound guy, like he went out there and came back and reported to us, and he's like, I don't know, man. So he's out there, and this is like a couple hours before we're supposed to go on, and
Yeah.
we're getting ready, and we're going, oh, okay, maybe if it's like 10,000 people, it'll
Yeah.
be cool, whatever. So he's going to his tech, the local sound tech, and he's like, you guys say this is a big festival, but I don't see it. I don't get it.
Right.
And he's like, the guy's like, no, just wait, just wait. And he's like, okay. And then an hour before we're supposed to play, still maybe like 5,000 people. He's like, I don't get it, man. He's like, just wait, just wait. He's like, how long do we have to wait? And he said 30 minutes before we're supposed to go on. It was like a scene from Lord of the Rings where it's just massive people coming out of the
Oh my
forest
God.
down into this bowl. And it was, later we found out, 375,000 people.
Oh my
And
God.
they had a full stadium light rig. they had 10 cameras on jibs throughout the whole place, sound towers, and we get up there and we're just, I mean, it was complete flip from what we were like. We were going into the worst show that we've ever done into the most insane. There was like, 15 massive mosh pits going at once. Like, we do this thing called the Braveheart or the Wall of Death, where we split the crowd down the middle and then they come together. There was 2 of those that was like 60 feet long. It was just like the most insane crowd we've ever played to. Amazing show, like something that one of our tentpole moments that we'll always remember. And then so we get done with that show. Next day we fly out to the UK to the Download Festival, and we're going to play that night, and we play in front of 60,000 people, and we get up there, and on any other day we go up there and go, yeah, this is awesome. We get up there and we're like, yeah, this is cool.
to 60,000 people. Oh my God.
So yeah, one of those just twisted, completely weird moments that in somebody's career. It's just like
when that
crazy.
happens. So like the lights go up, you go out. There's 350 or 375,000 people. Is there a moment on stage where you look at each other and you go, oh, okay, so this is happening? Like this,
totally.
like that's got to be the craziest experience.
Yeah, like I could probably count just like on a handful of times where I actually got really nervous and kind of got wobbly a little bit, and that was one of them. Like it was like, oh my God, this is just the sheer amount of people just kind of freaked me out a little bit. But yeah,
dude, that's what an astonishingly amazing experience that must have been.
Yeah, it was incredible.
That's cool.
You can actually see it. Like if you want to go, if you got some time or whatever, you can search it on YouTube. They have like the full set, but it's just, to watch a couple minutes of it just to see the crowd is just insane.
Yeah, I think Nick, I know you're listening. Nick's gonna have to find that link. We'll find it. We'll put that in the description. Really, everybody's gonna want to see that. So, okay, so now the band is killing it. You're out there now. All of a sudden, I'm sure you're starting to make some money coming in, and you're going, okay, well, because listen, rock and roll music and cars, it's like baseball and apple pie, man. They just go together, right?
Yep.
Did you always want in the back of your head, like, I really want to build something cool, or I want to have a collection, or I just like what I like, and I, like, what was your first car that you bought that you're like, this is cool, like this is,
Well, my first dream car was a Viper, and
well done.
Yeah, and it, when we 2001 we blew up, I was like, okay, I think I can do it, and so I was I actually bought I bought from the dealership in Nebraska. I think it's Woodhouse. They had and I don't remember how I figured that out. Like, I think probably just going on the forums and seeing, looking at what the best way to go about it was, and how I could get the car that I wanted and at a decent price and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it was like I got on with the guy and made my order. I ordered it in graphite gray. It was a 2002, and I was on tour. I had it delivered to my friend's house in LA and picked it up, and it was just like, holy crap, this is like, because it's like one of those, not only one of those pinch me moments, but the car had such a presence to it, especially
Did you get the coupe? The coupe or the roadster?
Coupe.
The coupe, dude. That is, I'm sure you follow the markets. You see what those things are worth right now?
I'm pissed because I sold it. I'm like, what?
They have shot through the roof, dude.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but to your point, look at the presence that it has.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a classic design. It's, it's a classically American thing. It's so well designed. The quality is, it's not that great, but
Right.
that's not what it's supposed to be. It's just
Right.
it's supposed to be a brutish American thing that
Yeah.
just smacks you in the face.
Yeah.
And, it handles pretty good, and, it keeps up with, a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of stuff. And it's not, I wouldn't call it refined, but that's not
No,
what it's
it's
supposed to be. So
Viper's like just a blunt instrument. It's a
yeah, totally.
sledgehammer that it just kind of beats the tarmac into
Yeah,
submission via the will of the driver.
totally. And the thing that the things that I loved about it were obviously the presence it had, the design, the looking out over the long hood, being down in it, that was an experience that I kind of miss, actually.
Yeah,
And just the torque of it was
I
just,
know.
you can just smash it in any gear and it just like just goes like.
Well, that's not an easy car to drive, right?
No, and I was
That's
scared of it. I mean, I was scared of it. I barely put my foot in it all the way. And,
yeah,
I might have, like, there was a couple times where I was like in a parking lot. I knew nothing, I couldn't hurt anything. And that
right.
was the only time that I really like went 100%. But, and I got to take it out on Sonoma. We did a track day out
Oh
there.
yeah, yeah.
And, it's out there with 911s and,
Hmm.
some Mercedes things, and it was awesome. It was a lot of fun, and I learned how to drive it. And the guy was like, you're doing pretty good. And
Yeah,
the funny thing was that my wife had got me that track day, and she was taking some video, and at the end of it, she was like, it didn't really seem like you're going that fast. Like all these other cars, the other cars were like, their tires are squealing, and this and that. And I'm like, well, you're not supposed to squeal the tires, like,
right. Yeah, that
smooth
means you're
is
going
fast.
slower.
That's what you want to be. So I was just like,
Right.
oh, okay. But had a blast with that car. And then it wasn't like until I had that, because I didn't even have a house at that point. Like, we went out on tour, and I had my stuff at my friend's house, and I didn't even have a place. And
That's
so, like,
crazy.
after that corn tour, I think it was like late 2001 was I actually started shopping for a house. And then I started looking at Mercs.
Right.
So
Well,
it was like, yeah.
your Merc is, and for those that don't know, I want you to go out after you hear this, and I just want you to Google 1951 Mercury. Just type in Reprise. The car is, honestly, it's one of my favorite Merc Customs. Everything about that car is just, it's so different. And you know this, right? So many people build a car, and there's a line, and you have to be very careful not to cross that line.
Yep.
Because once you do, you look at it and you're like, ruined, right? And and you know exactly
Yep.
what I'm talking about. Like, you'll see it and you'll be like, oh, that's a shame right there. If they
I've
just would have pulled the,
I've seen a
um,
few.
yeah, your car is, it's one, the color is astonishing, but it's elegant, it's handsome, it's muscular. You managed to incorporate all of these kind of stylistic cues in there that, and I know you built this car back 2011, right? Is that when it was done?
Well,
Something like that?
2012 is when it came home for the first time. Yeah.
Okay.
But I bought it in 2001.
Yeah, but it didn't look like that. I saw the picture before what it looked like.
Yeah. Yeah. It didn't look like that. I thought it was, and at this point, to go back, to really like go back into it, in 2001, I knew I wanted a cool custom, because what started me down that path was, the first thing was the movie Cobra.
Obviously,
And
sure.
you know
Yeah.
uh and then seeing the ZZ Top
Yep.
music videos with the Eliminator, and then Cadzilla. Cadzilla
Yep.
was really just what blew my, like, it completely blew my mind,
Yeah.
and really made me want to be in that culture, like to
Right.
be, you know, in, you know, at that time it was street rods, and to think about how much money he spent on that build, and
Yeah.
all of the innovation in terms of the build process, and you know, CNC, and
Right.
you know, he had 22-inch wheels on that car
Back then.
when you know, CNC was like just starting out in like industrial processes kind of thing,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, so that really made an impression on me, and that was, as you can see when you look at it, one of the big influences on my car. And so I went down to SoCal with a friend of mine, and I didn't really know anything about Kustumz, you know. And so I went to look at this car, and I was like, oh, this is cool, you know, and you know, it had white walls, and it had, you know, the vertical CAD tail lights,
Mhm.
and you know, the Continental kit was whatever. I could look past it, you know, and the
Yeah.
interior was kind of whatever, but I figured, you know, I could get into this, and it was still cool. Like, even as
Right.
not it's kind of sound stupid, but even as not great as it was still kind of cool for
Oh,
somebody
sure.
who like wasn't in the scene for, you know, any amount of time. You know, it's
Yeah.
kind of I was a newbie basically.
Sure, of
So,
course.
you know, so I get this thing, I have it appraised, right? And full disclosure, I bought it for like 30 grand, right? I that's pretty good. So
Yeah.
I have it appraised by the insurance company. The guy looks it over, you know, he's looking at everything, and he's like, oh, we'll appraise it at 40 grand. I'm like,
Hmm.
I'm good.
Yeah,
Cool.
sounds good. Yeah.
Right. So here's the story. So I, you know, I'm on tour. I stored at a friend's house, the same guy who took delivery of the Viper.
It's a good
His
friend.
name, yes, his name is Michael Badamy. He was actually our publisher at that time, but he was supercar guy. And so I get home from tour, and my girlfriend, who's now my wife, lived in LA. So we were like, let's take the Merc out. We're gonna go out, you know? And so we get out, we're going down like Sunset Boulevard, and we're like, yeah, this is awesome, you know? So you get these guys in the Bentleys driving by, and they're
Mhm.
pointing at the car, and they're like, you know, so I'm thinking, this is awesome, you know?
Right.
We get down in front of the Laugh Factory, car breaks down. I'm like, oh, great. So it's the battery. I'm like looking at it, and I remember that it's on hydraulics, and
Uh-huh.
there's one battery.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, that's a
something
problem.
else I didn't know. So I run across the street, get a battery, put it in there, and drive it straight back. So then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna send it somewhere, and I'm gonna get airbags on it.
Right.
And so I send it to this shop, and this guy takes like 2 years to not really do much, and his work is
Mhm.
kind of crappy. So I'm
Yeah.
like, take it out of there and send it to Bio Customs. And so he gets this thing, and you know, during that process is when big wheels start coming in,
Sure.
and I'm like, okay, I think I want to put big wheels on it, make it look cool. And then it's like, well, if I do that, then I'm gonna want to take the side pipes off and the spotlights off, and
Rabbit hole.
you know, and it just spirals, right? So, and the guy who had it before, he's like, well, I got some bad news. The skirts are welded on. So if you want to change a tire, you're gonna have to drop the axle or so I was like, all right, we got to cut the skirts.
Mhm.
And then, we do all this. And then so we send it to Bio Customs. Max gets it and he's like looking at it like, what are we doing with this thing? He's like, we're not going to be able to match this paint.
Right.
So I was like, okay, well, strip it down,
Now
I
I'm in.
guess,
Yeah, I'm
Here
in.
we
Let's
go.
do this.
And so he strips it down. He finds some Bondo and he says, and this is how he puts it. He's like, start sanding, couldn't get to the bottom of it. Took a chisel,
Oh
couldn't
no.
really get to the bottom of it. Took a
Oh.
hammer, start whacking at it, couldn't really get to the bottom of it. And, he ends up with almost inch and a half
Oh.
thick.
Oh.
There's like the two sections on the roof, on either side of by the C pillars, plate size sections where he just had to just completely cut it out.
Oh my God.
The Cadillac taillights,
Uh-huh.
it was
Bondo.
a masterpiece of Bondo.
Isn't
I'll
it
send you.
amazing? Isn't it amazing what you could do with
Yeah.
like good Bondo? Like, listen, I will give good Bondo guy all the credit in the world because
Yeah.
it's astonishing what a good
Yeah.
Bondo guy could do, right? They're like
It
they
really
are
is.
sculptors.
Yeah. And he was telling me, he's like, this is probably what happened is this car changed hands so many times. One guy got into it, found some Bondo. He's like, nope, cover
Nope.
it back up. And then the next guy gets into it. Nope, cover it back up. And he's like,
Right.
found like 2 or 3, 4 layers of it. So one thing leads to another. He gets to the point where he's like, well, he's like, how do you want to start out? And he's like, he had the taillights. He had the 54
Yeah.
Merc taillights. And he's like, I think these will be really cool. And he started in on it. He started shaping it, and I
Yeah.
didn't really like how it was in the first go around. And then so it ended up that he had to basically make new rear quarters to match up with that because they're completely different than the 51.
Right.
And then the trunk didn't really line up just right. So he's like, I want to weld this up and make a new cut line like on the Chevys. And I'm like, okay. And this, obviously this whole time I'm on tour, so it's all by phone.
You're right. But now
And
you have to realize that you're going in deep now, right?
yeah. And it was kind of like a look but don't look kind of thing.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and
Right.
he was taking a long time because he was having issues with his shop and this and that. And and because it was taking a long time, ideas were changing, and it was just, some of that was really bad because it was costing a lot of money, and then some of it
Yeah.
was good because I was avoiding making really bad decisions. And to your point earlier, there was like things that I wanted to do to the car that, had I let myself go, I would have regretted later on, like
Right.
5-spoke billets. That's what I wanted to do in the beginning. And then I came to my senses, just these little things where I wanted to like make a splash in the scene, or I
Right.
wanted to have a car that was really different. And this whole time Max is going, just make a car that's really nice. Just make a Merc that's nice. That's all you need
Right.
to do,
Right.
and of course, now looking back on it, it's like, yeah, whenever I see a nice Merc, I'm like, damn, that's a nice Merc. And that's all you need. Like,
That's
so,
right.
and so going back to the influences, Cadzilla was one of them. And then obviously the Hirohata, just because it's the king. But then diving into the story of the Hirohata and finding out who's behind it, Barris Brothers,
Right.
you know, George is the one who gets the credit, but Sam is the one who built the cars. And
George got a lot of credit for a lot of different things that George really didn't touch too much. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you know, to his credit, you know, he was great at promoting, and
Oh yeah.
you know,
Master
a lot of
marketer.
this, yeah, a lot of this stuff wouldn't have made the impression that it did hadn't he not been around. But I like to find out who's responsible for these things and give credit to those people.
Right.
So Sam Barris is like, you know, for people who know, he's the guy. And you know, it's debatable on who was the first to chop the Merc. You know, a lot of guys say he was one of the one. You know, there's other people that did it around the same time, but just the fact that he went and bought a new car off the lot, took it home,
cut it. Yep,
just
that's
went at
big,
it.
man.
You know, it's big. Like, so, and then looking at his car, the way he did the fenders was awesome. I didn't want to go that route, but I loved the color that he came up with.
Yeah.
And so the reason that I chose the green was in tribute to him and his car. Obviously, I wanted to make it something my own. And so I worked with Max to develop that color. And, you know, we got hooked up with House of Colors, and they supplied us what we needed. And Max hated me. He was just like, he went through probably 8 different test panels, and he's like, what do you think? And I'm like, almost, you know. And he was tired of hearing almost, but we finally landed on something, and
look what you created.
I love it. Like, I love it. I think when I repaint the car, I think it's just that's going to be it. Like, I don't want to do anything different, you know. So it's one of those, like, it flops, like it changes in different light, and it's not like one of those. It's not the chameleon type of a thing,
right?
You know, it's not that crazy, but in sunlight, it's one thing. In fluorescent light, it casts a blue. Halogen, it's like it leans super gold, so it's like charcoal base with a half of a, what is it, Aztec gold and lime green.
But I think that's one of the things where, you know, when you're building something, and you have to go through this with music as well, right? Like, you have to know, like, when it's right, you're like, that's right, that's right. So
it's hard. It's hard. Sometimes you need people around you to say, stop, that's it, you're done. And that's I think one of my roles in the band. Like, I don't write a lot of stuff, you know, I write some stuff, but our bass player Tobin, who writes a lot of the stuff, he will sometimes have a tendency to just keep going on stuff, and that's where I'm like, oh, that's it, that's awesome,
right, you got it,
stop,
nailed it, right?
Yeah. So Max was that for me for the Merc. Like, it was just like, that's good, stop, you know. And there were some times where I would defer to him on some ideas, like the front end, you know, I wanted the chin bumper, and he was like, let me do it flush, you know, I think it would be nice to just have it tight and have the headlights kind of, you know, have the headlights guide the thing. And I was like, because, you know, when you think of a Merc, you think French headlights,
of course,
chin spoiler,
right? Yeah,
you know, and that was the look that I was used to, and I trusted him. I was like, okay, and nailed it, you know. The trunk, that was him. Oh, and the other thing was that, you know, during the process, he was like, well, the roof is tweaked and it's going to take a lot of work, so it might be cheaper for me to just make one. And I'm like,
Yeah, dude, I have been down this road, and this is what it's. People ask me all the time, would you buy a car? Or would you build a car? I'm like, it really depends, right?
yeah.
If you buy somebody else's car with a
Mhm.
dream of making it your own, you have to understand that you are diving into a massive rabbit hole that financially you might not be able to crawl out of. And
Yep.
this is what, like, because it can, as you know, you build a car, man, costs can spiral and spiral and spiral and spiral, and you still might not get what you want, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
especially if you're going, we're talking about cars now that are 60 years old, right?
Mhm.
65 years old. There's
Yeah.
been a lot of hands in these vehicles over the past 40, 50, 60 years. And some of the hands could be good, some could be pretty terrible. But
Yeah.
you're gonna find out when you start pulling it apart, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
so to have somebody that can act as kind of that guide, but who's also very honest with you, like Max said to you, and he was just like, all right, man, at least when you do that, and he said that we might be able to just build our own roof, you knew exactly what you'd get.
Yeah.
You're not, for lack of a better phrase, kind of un-effing what somebody else did,
Yeah.
right? You're making a clean sheet of paper.
Yep. Yeah. And he was like, well, I want to make the windows a little bigger and this and that. And I'm like, wait, what? No, it's a chop. It's supposed to be chopped. Like, and he goes, no, there was a lot of fat in the roof and it's still going to be low. And I mean, when I tell you, when I saw the first, you know, hints of what he was doing, I was like, oh, and because he was talking about one of the really difficult things with these cars is uh for somebody who like when you use the back glass out of a 51, it's really hard to lean it down and to get
Right.
that profile to be just right. And so that's
Right.
why a lot of guys will use the 49 and 50 back glass because they have the rounded edges and they're flatter, so they're easier to really just get that profile. Whereas
Okay.
at 51, you have to do a lot of work to get it looking like it's supposed to be there.
Gotcha.
So that was another thing that's like when Merc guys see it, they know. But to a lot of people who just look at it, they're just like, it's a chop Merc. And
Right.
that's kind of like it's a slap in the face, but it's also a compliment because the goal with a lot of these cars is to do things that look like they could have come from the factory, but
That's the key,
yeah. So
right?
yeah. And
I mean, if
so
somebody can walk by the car, I love walking by a car, kind of giving it an initial scan, and then wait a minute, and then
yeah.
turning back around and going back over the car, because then I know I'm spending 45 minutes now
Mhm.
just picking it apart and discovering new things that I hadn't seen before. That to me is the sign of a great builder and a good artist,
Yep.
to create
Exactly.
stuff like that. And it's
Yeah.
also, when people do that, I think that's the highest compliment they can pay the vehicle, right?
Yep. Yep. Totally. So one other thing that I just want to say is that and there's no CNC involved in this build. And it's like, it may have been a little more expensive, but I think that it's cool to say, there is billet aluminum on the car, but it's not CNC. Like he
Right.
hand milled everything. Like the I don't know how much time you got, but I can just go through like some of the details. He did the trim,
Mhm.
hand milled that.
Yeah.
The the bumpers are hand done. The
Yep.
the side trim, there's the Mercury logos on the on the heads of the side trim.
Mhm.
That's He says that's the most expensive part per capita because uh, I wanted to keep the Merc theme, right? And I wanted to have a signature something on the car that
Right.
That was a custom touch that, again, looked like it could come from the factory, but just elevated it a little bit,
Right.
and so we talked about doing the Merc head because I saw
Well,
there
dude,
was a
that
blue Merc.
logo is iconic. First of all, it's iconic.
Totally.
And to have
Yep.
that kind of like the Romanesque head that's in there. And then
Mhm.
the way that you did it on the wheels, on the belt line of the car, again, it's very, very subtle, but it is one
Yeah.
of those things where you look at, and people who aren't educated in the cars to be like, well, did they do that from the factory? Maybe they didn't, that's the coolest part. It
Yeah.
looks like it's a factory. It looks like it should be there, right?
Yeah. Right. So for the wheels, we did take the centers are from 55 Mercury hubcaps,
Mhm.
right? And we used their centerline wheels.
Okay.
I think they're called Smoothie.
Mhm.
And those are, we took those as the basis, and we knew when we wanted that. And then so he took chunks of billet. He bought a rotary table for his Bridgeport mill, drew it up, drew a template on
Yeah.
a piece of cardboard, and went to work. And the prototype that he made, he used for the air cleaner. And then
Yep.
once he got it figured out, did the wheels out of that. And then so we talked about using the center, the hubcap, as a basis for that, the logo for the side,
Okay.
for the trim, but they were too big, and I didn't want to have one facing backwards.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
That makes sense. Sure.
yeah, so we took that and we sent it to, it used to be called Motorhead Jewelry.
Okay.
And so they scanned it and made a mold of it, cast it, chromed it, and then so that's what we used. And then this is the thing that was kind of ridiculous, but I just had this thing in my head where I'm like, okay, if I'm driving at night and I want to switch lanes, I want people to know that I'm getting over, so I want to have a light there on the side of the car, kind of like the European side marker light.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I got the idea from the BMW Z4 has it in the BMW logo.
That's right. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And so I told Max and I said, is there a way we can make this happen? And he's like, scratches his chin for a little bit and he goes, yeah, okay. And so he figured out a way to mounted it up to this the fluorescent
Yeah.
ceiling fixture lens. I don't know what that's called.
Okay. Like the dome light?
Like the long fluorescent
Oh, yeah,
lights,
Yeah.
just the lenses that come on that.
Mhm.
Just cut that out, mounted that to the back, made a cup out of some sheet metal, mounted that from the backside.
Isn't that amazing?
LED. Yeah.
Like for him to figure something like it always I've said this before, like I think in 2 dimensions, I don't think in 3 dimensions, right?
Right.
So it's hard for me to envision, and I have a lot of friends that are builders and that are artists, and I'm just so perplexed by how they'll visualize something in their head in 3 dimensions, and in the span of I don't know, 30 seconds, they can literally sketch it out on a piece of paper and go, oh yeah, I could probably do this. And I'm like, how on God's earth did you make that happen? Like that?
Yeah.
I could spend decades and I could still never do something that good. It's infuriating. My God,
exactly.
good for him. That's awesome. That's a nice touch though.
Yeah. Yep. So that was, that was like one of those, that's one of my favorite pieces on the car. Other things like the gas filler in the tail light, that came as a, one of his first solution was to have the filler in the trunk. But I was like in my head thinking, I don't want to spill gas in the trunk. So how can we do something else. He's like, okay, I got it.
I got it. Yeah.
And then, I told him I want to have the trunk be motorized. And, he's like, well, we could do this, we could do that. I don't want to I want to make it so you can't really see the motors, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Scratches his chin. Okay, I got it. And
so let me ask you, were you married at this point? Or were you?
we got married in 2002. So I was married just after I got the car. Yes.
But you guys were together during the build process.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Was there ever a point where your wife now looked at you and was like, so, my man, what are you doing? Because I think if you've been with somebody for a fair amount of time, at some point, that conversation's going to come up. And then you, as the person in charge, you got to explain that. So how did that conversation go?
She has been incredibly gracious, and not saying that she never got upset, that she never got like you said, like, dude, what's happening here? She did check me a few times, and it was like, okay, I'm into this, it's part of it was like, I'm into this for this amount. And I can't just stop. I can't just cut it off. Like, I got to see it through. But then it did get to a point where it was like, you got to pick one. Cause I had the Viper at that time.
Right.
Pick one. So that was like, okay, sell the Viper.
Right.
And which is another story in itself, but that was my like, okay, I got to do this right. I got to, because obviously the dream is to have the cool car and to have the fast car and
absolutely. Listen,
that's the dream.
Preach to the choir, bro. Yeah. Yeah.
But it was like, okay, retreat.
Right.
Retreat to fight another day. That's like, and she's been incredibly amazing and gracious and awesome about it this whole time. So
when you were building it, like when you started to see the car come together, right? You had said, okay, well, the body lines are exactly kind of where I want them. You see now how the fenders and how the emblems and the logos are coming out, and you're seeing the interior be crafted. Was there ever a time that you said, or when you first started diving into the build, were you like, this is going to be a forever car? Like, I'm never selling it. I've got so much of my time and my heart, my soul into this thing, aside from financial investment. But did you ever think to yourself like, ooh, maybe I'm going to sell this? Or have you ever thought of that? Because now you've had it for quite some time.
I've had it for a long time, and I have thought about it, but I just I'm not that kind of person who needs to just be on to the next thing.
Right.
Like, I'm the kind of do it once, do it right kind of thing. Like, I want to have the car. Like, I want a custom. The Merc is, to me, the one.
Right.
And I wanted to make it the best that I could.
Yeah.
And, are there some things on it that, looking back, I didn't really need to do, or, could have done something different? Probably yes. But I mean, it's pretty much how I would want it. And I just don't see myself getting rid of it. Like, I have, I also have a 911, which is awesome, and I love it. I might move on from that, you know what I mean? But the Merc, it's
interesting because I think that car is, I think when you create something like that, right? Like the 911, anybody can go out and buy a 911, right? They're whatever. And I mean, I have an older 911 and I'm not attached. I like it. It's a lot of fun. but I have zero emotional attachment to that car because on any given day I can go out on a Saturday in whatever twisty or and see 5 of them, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Whereby like my old Charger, like my 68 Charger, I've had that car for 20 years. And I look at that car, and every time I look at that car, I still go, I just love it. Like I still get excited when I see that car. And I think that's such a rare thing because with the Merc, you've made it yours. And if you were to ever sell it, right? Say one, I think you'd get the hell out of it. But two, whoever then owned it would have to have the problem of saying, hey, you own Jerry's Merc.
Right.
Because you've become known for that car. And I think the car has, again, such this kind of physical presence that when people look at it, whether you knew it or not at the time, I think you've created an icon. And I think that's such a rare thing in the automotive world to be able to combine elegance, taste, power, but keep it very classy. And in 50 years, that car will still look outstanding. And that, I think, is the tried and true testament to kind of the design aesthetics that you put into the car. It's honestly, it's one of my favorites. I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass. I think the car is rad, dude. I think it's awesome.
I really appreciate that. Like, that's, to me, like having, somebody at a Cars and Coffee go, oh, cool, that's cool. But to have people that really know and who are like entrenched in culture, really be able to appreciate not just looking at it from 50 feet, but all of the stuff that goes into it. That's like, that's what we're all about, right? You know what I mean? Like self-expression to people who really know what is up, and so that's like something that I think, like, maybe I'll add to it if I ever can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally. Like add to the garage, like whatever, someday I'd like to maybe do a 32 or something, something along those lines. Yeah. But like you said, it's like when I see your Charger, I'm just like, oh, that's Musto. That's
right.
That's like you said, like I'm associating that car with you. Like, it would take you not a lifetime, but it would take you a long time to really like have another car that somebody sees it and goes, oh, that's Musto. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I don't know if like you said, like I've owned, I don't know how many cars over the years. Right. And if you look at the car, like, and I just, like what you said, like for the Merc, if you wanted to update or do some stuff, you could, like, I just literally redid the Charger mechanically. I put air conditioning in it and power windows and all this stuff. But it's just to make it better because I want to keep using it for the rest of however long I'm on this earth. I want to have that car. But that doesn't mean like I said, Porsche found its way into the garage and it might leave. And I might go out and buy something else to experience. I want to experience as many things as I can. But the Charger has always been my rock. It's always been that one thing I'm like, okay, that's mine. And when you look at it, like it's got, Boyd Coddington's, 5-spoke billets from like 2000. They're dated, but in the same token, I'm not changing them because it wouldn't be the same car. Subsequently, God forbid, knock on wood, something would have happened that car, I would not go out and buy another Charger because it's not that car, right?
Yeah. So. I mean, I don't know. Don't knock the billet 5-spokes for the Charger. It's like
they work.
Well, I mean, I love OEM plus. And that to me, it's just OEM plus. It makes it sit right. You know what I mean? Like it has that power stance to it, and they just fit the car. Like billet 5-spoke should be nowhere near a custom, a 50s car.
Right.
Keep it away.
Totally agree. Absolutely.
Muscle car.
Absolutely.
Go for it.
Yeah.
So
how often do you actually, because I know you do a lot of touring and your schedule is probably crazy. How often do you get to actually enjoy the car? to take it out and enjoy? And is it something that your family enjoys as well?
Well, I get to drive it a fair amount. It's really just local. I don't like to drive it very far, but I'll take it to Cars and Coffee. I'll do a cruise in it.
Yeah.
And the family, because over the first few years of having it, there were some issues happening with it. It broke down probably 3 or 4 times that they were in the car. So
In there. Yep.
they're a little bit hesitant to get in the car. So sometimes I'm going it alone. Sometimes my wife will come with me, but the kids are just like, I don't know.
I do though. I think that's great, because it's so funny because, I think as enthusiasts and as owners of these things, we look at them, and for like you or I, like I'm sure every squeak, every rattle, everything about that car when you drive it.
Yeah.
Right. In the same way, like with my car, I know every little nuance. I'm like, what was that? That's new. Or what, and you just get used to it.
Yeah. Somebody sits in the car for the first time. They're like, "No, that's squeaking." You're like, "Yeah, I know.
You're fine. You're totally
That's
fine."
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that's part of it. And I'm probably over romanticizing it only because I love old cars so much. And I get new cars to test as press cars, and I have no real love for them because there's just so much. Like the newest car I own is my 911, and that's 20 years old or 21 years old, right? So it's an '02. So it's an old car. Yeah, it's an old car.
I thought it's not a 997.
No, it's a C4 996 C4S. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's old. It's
That's
just an
crazy.
old Porsche.
Yeah.
So it's like, but it's still what I like in a car. There's no screens. It's totally analog. It feels analog. It drives analog.
Mhm.
It has traction control that kind of works, right? And I like that because it's a very kind of guttural experience where a lot of the new cars that I get in now, I have no emotional connection. And I think as an enthusiast,
they're too good.
They're too, like you would ping me about that GT3, the 997, the GT3. So one of my all-time favorite cars, my unicorn, is a 997 GT3 RS Gen 2.2. And I had a buddy that had one. He couldn't have been more gracious by letting me race the car. We raced it in one lap of America. And ever since I drove that car, that has been the pinnacle for me. And I've driven Bugattis and I've driven every other thing of Porsche and Ferrari and all that stuff. That specific car was the one that I'm like, that's it. Like that's what I cannot afford it. I don't think I'll ever be able to afford it.
It's crazy.
But it's still, I feel so fortunate that I was able to experience such a wonderful machine that, and I think in the back of your head, you have to have those things that you want to look forward to. And like, I have friends of mine, they're like, well, why don't you just sell the Charger or buy it? I'm like, that's not even an option. Like that not even an option. Can't happen. Right. So unless, Hemmings pays me a lot more money. Hey guys, you can pay me a lot more money, or I win lotto or something like that.
Yeah.
The idea of achieving those is just a little bit of a dream. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's an experience. And I think that, that's what I don't know if it's because of social media or if it's just because the newest cars are so good and do so much for the driver that it takes away from the experience a little bit, that everybody is wanting that era, that generation of car, just because it's like that's like the highest performing without all of the extra electronics, and still a fairly analog experience. It has the traction control, so you don't get
right
off
like
the road.
your Viper.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
There is that you want to talk about like just analog and
Basic.
visceral and guttural and like a full-blown sports car, that's kind of it, right?
Yeah.
Like you whereas and you have a 911, you have a Gen 2, right? 997 Gen 2?
Gen 2 97, yep.
Okay. So outstanding. It was so the dot twos for those out there, the 997s are probably the last really analog 911 that Porsche made. Once they went to the 991, things changed. The cars got a little bigger, a little fatter, a little more, a little too much tech for me.
Yeah.
You
well,
know?
they're higher performing. Like that's the thing about them, is that you have to push them so much harder to get a level of like a sense of speed of the 997, because their wheelbase is longer and they have the rear steer and the electronic power steering. You have to push them so much harder than the 997. It's like you don't get that same, you don't get access to that level of the sense of speed that you do with the 997. So it's like, yeah, for me, kind of go back and forth between, do I want to, I always want a higher performing car, but at the same time, if you go with that higher performing level, then your sense of speed maybe isn't as great. So it's like, do I go backwards? Like I've talked to a few people where they're like, I'm going backwards because like you can actually use that, all of the gears on the road, and
like I know my performance level, right? And I've been running tracks for 30 years. That's really, I don't like saying that, but the long ass time, right?
Yeah.
So it's true. Like, if you were to give me like a brand new GT3, I can't drive that to the level. I like it's literally wasted on me. I can't, aside to say that I own a GT3. Oh, that's great, Mike. Can you drive it? Not that well, right? A 996 or like a 997 GT3. Yes, I can get in and I can wheel that car and I can still feel the sense of speed, because I'm also at the point in my life where I'm not winning any races. Nobody's going to be like, hey, Musto, we want you to race for it. Never going to happen. Those days are dead. Not that they were, not those days were ever a thing. In my mind, they kind of were, but no. So at least in the cars that I have, I can enjoy them and I can feel, even if I'm kidding myself, that I'm getting the most out of them, and that it's kind of like a kind of a give and take, right? Like I'm doing justice to the car, the car is doing justice to my skill level, and I'm thoroughly enjoying them. And that's why I think the newer stuff, it's I think that's why it probably doesn't appeal to me as much as it probably, not that I don't appreciate it. I think it's amazing and astonishing what they can do, but I just like old stuff, man. I don't know. It speaks to me.
Well, everything these days is like, they're just, I don't know. I want to say on some level, they have to make things quote unquote better, right? They have to like make it quicker, or they have to make it faster, or they have to make it more efficient, or this or that. And they're doing whatever they can to get there. But while they're getting there, it just seems like everything is kind of getting this, not getting the same, but they're just like sucking the character out of it. You know what I mean? Like, there's
every new sports car now, they do. It's like I always say, it's like if you look at a new SUV right now, they all look exactly the same. Right. Every new sports car right now, with the exception of a few, and we're talking super high end stuff like the higher end Ferraris and things like that. Pretty much do the same thing. They pretty much pull the exact. They pretty much, 0 to 60 is the same. All running hybrid drivetrains. Top speed is the same. Cornering G's are the same for the most part. Right. It's not like when I was a kid and I would see a 308 Ferrari on the street and be like, oh, and my head would explode. Or you would see a Countach, or for some miracle, you would see at a show or in a museum a 959. And where these cars had these such distinct personalities, where now they just kind of morph into one thing. So I think you're going to see this shift in the automotive world, where cars like your 997, the Merc, these cars that deliver this visceral experience, be it good or be it bad, are really starting to come back around. Viper, again, perfect example. The prices have skyrocketed, right? Analog 911s skyrocket, older Ferraris, Lamborghinis skyrocketed. And it's like, if you have them now, if people out there have them, hold on to those cars, because you are going to be so upset if you sell them. I promise you that. So it's like, I go through it every day, dude. This is it's rough.
It's a struggle. It's a struggle.
It's a struggle. Well, dude, let me ask you, where can everybody, we're coming up on like, there's the quickest hour and a half ever. My God.
Ooh, hour and a half. Geez.
Hour and a half. Where can everybody find what's going on with you, with the music, with the cars, with everything that you're doing?
Yeah. So, I mean, at Papa Roach, everything, at Jerry Horton, everything. If, we're talking just cars, my account is Drive Culture with a K. And I've been posting mostly just stuff about the Merc lately. But, just hit me up on there. I like to bullshit back and forth with people, and, I've said before, like all the guys in my band, everybody like on our crew, and pretty much anybody that is around me in the music side of things, not really into cars. So I gotta find somebody to talk to about it. So yep, Drive Culture is where I'm at, and hit me up. It's a good time. Yeah.
Well, Jerry, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. It has been an absolute pleasure. Obviously you're coming back again, because this conversation's not done. So
it's not done yet.
It's not done.
Yep.
So and everybody, as always, thank you for turning into the barbecue. And Jerry, this will be up very shortly. We're going to send it out to everybody. And that's it, man. So until next time, dude, I really appreciate it.
It's been a lot of fun. Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening, folks. And again, please subscribe to the Hot Rod BBQ podcast. If you're on Spotify, check us out there. Subscribe to it on iTunes. And if you are going to go to YouTube, make sure you go to the Hot Rod BBQ podcast and hit that subscribe button, and we'll come to you every week.